In the play Tartuffe, a 1664 uproarious comedy of satire and farce, Molière makes his personal perspective clear. He disapproves of con man Tartuffe's hypocrisy, and through his ridicule and irony, shines the light of satire on such people within French society. In Act 1 of the play, Orgon is away in the country, and his mother, Madame Pernelle, has come to visit his family. She finds fault with each of them, but will hear nothing against Orgon's houseguest, the pious Tartuffe. The family considers Tartuffe bigoted, hypocritical, and overbearing, and complains that Tartuffe lords over all of them as if he owns the place. Dorine, a maid, says he doesn't like visitors because he's jealous of Orgon's wife, Elmire. Madame Pernelle says they entertain too much anyway, which has given them a bad reputation in the neighborhood. The family decides they must do something to make Orgon see what a hypocrite and con man Tartuffe really is. Tartuffe isn't just a titular character, but a key symbol in the play that represents the hypocrisy rife within some groups in the conservative Roman Catholic Church. Although not truly religious, he takes on the outward trappings of ultra-conservative Roman Catholic fanaticism, notably the Devots, a movement in France that arose in the early 1600s to oppose the growth of Protestantism and the supremacy of the king over the church. One group involved with the movement was the Society of the Holy Sacrament, which was instrumental in getting Tartuffe banned after its first presentation in 1664. Molière invoked an association with them by attributing to Tartuffe such trappings of supposedly Catholic religiosity as ostentatious prayer, almsgiving, wearing a hair shirt, and scourging himself while praying. When Orgon returns home, he quizzes Dorine on what Tartuffe has been doing in his absence, ignoring her attempts to tell him about his wife's illness. Orgon's brother-in-law, Cléante, confronts him. Cléante is another key symbol in the form of a character. He embodies Enlightenment principles, such as rational thought, truth, the dominance of law, and natural religion reflecting natural human emotions. Molière uses this figure to take aim at the 17th century groups like the Society of the Holy Sacrament. Later, he also praises the rule of law to Damis when he speaks of this just kingdom, this enlightened age, in which one does not settle things by violence. Here, Tartuffe takes the opportunity to tell Cléante how Orgon first spotted him praying ostentatiously in church and was impressed by his piety. Learning Tartuffe was impoverished, Orgon gave him money and eventually offered him a place to live. Cléante tries to convince Orgon of Tartuffe's true nature, but fails. In Act 2, Orgon tells Marianne he wants her to marry Tartuffe instead of her one true love, Valère. She resists. Dorine tries a variety of arguments to dissuade Orgon, but she fails, and Orgon leaves, determined this marriage will take place. Dorine gets angry at Marianne for not standing up for herself. Marianne begs Dorine to help her. They're interrupted by Valère's arrival. Valère and Marianne are both upset and find it difficult to be straightforward with one another. Each is afraid of appearing vulnerable. In the end, Dorine tells them they love each other and lays out her plan. Marianne will agree to marry Tartuffe, but will manage a continual delay of the wedding with various excuses. Valère will plead their case to Orgon's friends, and Dorine will enlist Elmire's help. In Act 3, Elmire, Orgon's wife, has asked Dorine to have Tartuffe come talk with her. Damis, Orgon's son, hides in the closet to eavesdrop. When Tartuffe arrives, he makes a show of telling his servant to put away his hair shirt and scourge, which he was using while praying. A hair shirt is a garment made from coarse animal hair, meant to cause discomfort and promote pious behavior. A scourge is a type of whip used by religious zealots to whip themselves in order to suffer as Christ suffered. Upon Tartuffe's arrival, only Dorine is there to greet him. He asks her to cover her bosom so that he, being only flesh and blood, will not be tempted. Dorine tells him Elmire wants to see him, which brightens his mood. When Elmire arrives, she tells Tartuffe she wants to talk with him about a private matter. He misunderstands and makes a passionate declaration of love and lust. She wonders what her husband would think of his declaration and says that if Tartuffe will convince Orgon to let Marianne and Valère marry, she will not tell Orgon Tartuffe has made a pass at her. Before Tartuffe can agree, Damis bursts from his hiding place and confronts Tartuffe for making advances on Elmire. Orgon walks in and is horrified that his son should make such accusations. Tartuffe says it's only right for him to be accused. He is a sinner. Tartuffe's apparent humility convinces Orgon of his innocence. He throws his son out of the house, promises Tartuffe he can marry Marianne that very night, and decides to make Tartuffe his heir, deeding the house to him. In Act 4, the whole neighborhood learns Orgon has disinherited Damis. Cléante asks Tartuffe to forgive Damis. Tartuffe says he's done so but cannot live in the same house with someone who's libeled him. Cléante asks him to refuse Orgon's legacy, but Tartuffe says he must ensure the wealth is spent for pious purposes and not sinful ones. When Tartuffe realizes he can't fool Cléante, he leaves. Dorine and the family join forces in a final attempt to convince Orgon to let Marianne marry Valère, but he stands firm. And finally, Elmire gets him to humor her and hide under a table while she talks with Tartuffe. From their conversation, it's clear that Tartuffe did declare his feelings for her that very morning, and now he pushes for a physical demonstration of her affections. Orgon's eyes are finally opened, and he confronts Tartuffe, ordering the man out of the house. Ultimately, the deed has already been signed, and Tartuffe claims the house as his own. Orgon and his family must leave. Alone with Elmire, Orgon says they must go look for a strongbox in Tartuffe's room. In Act 5, Orgon explains to Cléante that the strongbox contains papers belonging to a friend of his who had to flee to Paris. Having them in his possession could look bad for Orgon. Damis joins the two men and offers to do away with Tartuffe. Cléante warns Orgon that violence is not the way to settle problems. Madame Pernelle arrives, convinced that Orgon has misinterpreted Tartuffe's words and actions. He's a pious man and would never do anything that Orgon says he did. It's not until a bailiff appears with an eviction notice that she accepts the truth. Valère arrives with more bad news. Tartuffe has shown the contents of the strongbox to the king, and Orgon is to be arrested. Valère will help Orgon flee, but before the two men can leave, Tartuffe arrives, followed by a police officer. Tartuffe says he's there to arrest Orgon, but the police officer arrests Tartuffe instead, under orders from the king, who recognized Tartuffe as a wanted criminal. Orgon has been pardoned and his property restored to him. Cléante proposes that Orgon go thank the king, and he agrees. And afterward, they will hold a wedding for Marianne and Valère. Now, even though the play is very funny, it makes some pointedly serious points and speaks to many criticisms of its time and place context, as evidenced by its major themes. The main theme of Tartuffe is hypocrisy, pretending to be something one is not or claiming to believe something one doesn't. Some characters in the play are knowingly hypocrites. Tartuffe, his invisible servant, Laurent, and Monsieur Loyal. Other characters, such as Orgon and his mother, do not recognize their own hypocrisy. Tartuffe and his servant Laurent are thieves and con artists. They exploit their victims by running scams, and their scheme here is presenting Tartuffe as a pious man who lost his lands and wealth to dupe Orgon out of his own property and wealth. At the end of the play, when a bailiff comes to evict Orgon and his family, Molière's verbal irony underlines his hypocrisy, as he names the character Monsieur Loyal. Having fallen under the sway of a hypocrite, Orgon's own Christianity has become perverted. He believes he's doing what's expected of him by God because this is what Tartuffe has manipulated him into thinking. Such unwitting hypocrisy may be more dangerous because it can become a social movement with self-aware leaders and an army of duped followers carrying out their wishes. This is the sort of political message that certain clergy objected to in Tartuffe. Gullibility is another important theme. To be gullible is to be easily deceived or taken advantage of. Too often, gullible people are ready to believe things that are presented at least somewhat convincingly, but aren't actually true. From the moment Tartuffe met Orgon, he knew he'd found the perfect target for his scam. Tartuffe puts in a lot of effort to con Orgon. After all, the payoff will be huge. All Orgon's wealth and property. Tartuffe is not the only person to trick Orgon. It's not very difficult to do so. Orgon's opinionated mother is also gullible. She only falls victim to Tartuffe and Laurent's displays of piety, but also believes all the neighbors' false claims. The third important theme in Tartuffe is that of moderation and reason, prized qualities during the Enlightenment, which by the 1660s was in full swing. Cléante takes Orgon to task and recommends moderation and reason, urging Orgon to take the middle course rather than jumping between absurd extremes. Doreen warns Damis against rash behavior. Don't give way to violent emotion, and urges him to calm down and be practical. In Act 4, Scene 3, Elmire is amazed at her husband's refusal to accept solid evidence of Tartuffe's hypocrisy. When he proclaims she should have been more upset, Elmire reveals herself to be moderate and reasonable. True piety and humility is a final critical theme. In Act 1, Scene 5, Cléante lists the characteristics of those who are truly pious. They're never ostentatious, their religion's moderate and humane. They show by deeds how Christians should behave. To lead a good life is their one desire. It is not the sinner, but sin alone which they condemn. These are traits Elmire demonstrates, most notably in her encounters with Tartuffe. The scenes that bring Tartuffe and Elmire face to face juxtapose his hypocrisy with her true piety and humility. Tartuffe wears a false mask of piety to further selfish and cruel goals. Elmire puts on a mask of interest in Tartuffe for selfless reasons, to show her husband the truth about Tartuffe. She has to ignore her own aversion to lying. Later on, Elmire feels so uncomfortable about having been duplicitous that she even apologizes to Tartuffe. She is the embodiment of true piety and humility. Tartuffe was first performed for Louis XIV and his court at Versailles in May of 1664. Louis enjoyed it very much. However, his mother, Queen Anne, and an ultra-devout group known as the Society of the Holy Sacrament were offended and demanded the play be banned, claiming it was an attack on religion. The king temporarily banned the play from public performance, but allowed private readings. It was not until 1669 that the ban was permanently lifted. Long after Molière's death, the controversial play remains a beloved artistic reminder of questioning motives and manipulations of those around us.